And kia ora, everybody. We'll just give it a couple more minutes just to give everyone a chance to rock on in post school, and then we will get started. If you're okay to chuck your camera on and say hi to your fellow participants today, I promise you won't have to have your camera on for the whole time. Just give everyone a wave so they know that you're there. We'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Our first hand up. Is that you, Daniel? Kia ora. Okay. What we'll do is we'll make a start. Kia ora, everyone. My name's Hemi, and I will be leading us through this webinar today. The purpose of our webinar is really just to kind of go through the Phase 5 materials and just to step through what those look like. Answer as many questions as we can. We don't have all the answers, but we'll have some that we might be able to help with. And then hopefully post this meeting, catch up with anyone who wants to talk a little bit more detail around the Phase 5 products and where to next. So we're going to start our hui off today with a karakia, and then we will get straight into our mahi today. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou i te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai tātou, ia tātou katoa, haumie, huie, tai kie. I'm going to just start with a very quick poll. So hopefully this poll will pop up for you. And it is just a question regarding whether or not you've had a chance to. The first question is, what is your first, or what has been your first reaction to the draft materials? You should have seen a little star thing pop up. 1 star, what were they thinking? 5 stars, looks amazing. No stars if you haven't had a chance yet. That's going to be the next question. Have you had a chance to look at them? So while I get kicking on to the intro, if you can complete that poll, that would be amazing. So as you will all be aware, the Phase 5 materials dropped recently, and the one of the things that you'll notice is it's remarkably different from the Phase 1 to 4 products. As we go through this corridor presentation today, please feel free to chuck any questions into the chat, raise your hand if you've got a partai or question you want to ask, and we can try and talk through that together. We will hopefully have a brief opportunity to go into some breakout rooms and just talk through what we've talked about today together as a group, and then we'll come back and feedback on some of that corridor. So today we're really just going to go through a curriculum overview. We're going to preview the Phase 5 materials. We'll do a little bit of a breakout and then just do a summary of the things that we've covered, and also the things that are common between some of the materials, and then talk about what the consultation timeframe is, because it's a very tight timeframe that we're working to. So the first part of the webinar this afternoon is really looking at the overview of the curriculum, and we think it's important for people to understand how the curriculum currently looks. These are the new products, and there are two important parts that are working side by side and kind of converge in, well, they do converge in year 12 and 13. So Te Mārautanga o Aotearoa is being developed. That's the Māori medium curriculum. And Te Waiora, which is the health and PE equivalent for years 1 to 10 is currently in draft form. And then for year 11, they have a subject called Ngā Akoranga Koiri, which is the equivalent to physical education in year 11. So then we've got the English medium curriculum, which you will have all seen or interacted with potentially over the last little while. That health and PE for years 1 to 10 is still currently in draft. We don't have a time frame yet on when that will be released, but it is being revised and reworked based on all the consultation feedback that was received prior to during that April period. And then we have these new materials in physical education for year 11, and then this combined subject, which will be for both Māori medium and English medium, called physical education Ngā Akoranga Koiri, which is year 12 and 13 combined. So all of the students, effectively any student in Aotearoa that is taking physical education in year 12 and 13 will be doing the same subject. One will be through the medium of Te Reo Māori and one will be through English as the medium. I'll just pause briefly there for any questions that might arise in that from that framework. Are there any questions about that? So there are two parallel pieces of work running towards this combined place in year 12 and 13. Kapai. The poll results, before I move on to the next thing, the poll results show that we're kind of sitting in the middle. We're like, oh, it's not bad. I'm not sure. We're sitting in the, is that the 6, 7? I don't know. The meh. We're in the meh, which is not bad. You know, I think when we looked at the initial phase 1 to 4 products, many of us were like, what were they thinking? That was a 1-star kind of effort. So it's actually probably quite a good sign that we've moved away from that kind of initial, we have no idea what's going on here, reaction to feeling like a little bit like PE, but we might have a number of questions still kind of bubbling away. So that's the overview. So where we're at the moment for phase 5 is we have year 11 Ngā Akoranga Koiri for Māori medium, year 11 physical education in draft, and then we have this combined year 11 and 12, year 12 and 13 PE subject, all in draft, all currently open for feedback from you and from the wider physical education community. So I'm just going to jump into the document now so you can kind of see how it's broken out. And what you'll see on each slide is that there are questions which may be useful, especially if you're going to be talking about this in a department or as in groups of people. They're just really designed to kind of prompt some thinking about the types of things you might want to feedback on. PENZ will be developing its own submission based on what we hear from you and from our community, but we are encouraging everyone to actively engage in the parts that really matter to them and to feed that back to the ministry. The more voices, as we've seen with the phase 1 to 4 consultation, the more voices we hear, the more likely the ministry is to adjust the products or the materials to reflect what the community needs are. So it has been really useful to date. So we encourage you to kind of get involved in that space. Right, on to the purpose and vision. So you'll see that the curriculum documents for year 11 and 12 and 13 follow a very similar pattern, almost identical in terms of content for the front part of it. So you'll have the purpose and vision section. And so some of the things you might be wanting to think about is, does this clearly communicate the purpose of PE? Does it feel like PE? As we kind of experience and know it in Aotearoa, is there an appropriate balance between movement, well-being, and disciplinary knowledge? Does it unpack those things and sufficiently? Remembering that the front part of this curriculum is similar across all of the learning areas. So all of the learning areas have these vision and purpose statements, and as you'll see as we get through the presentation, they have subject descriptors and pathways, and then they have these capabilities and disciplinary writing sections. So this isn't unique to physical education, but it is something to be aware of and to dig into a little bit more deeply. So you'll see that the whakatauki is still there, he oranga ngā kauhepikinga wairua. So that still exists and it still is attempting to do the work of the health and physical education learning area to support this holistic kind of development. But the question still needs to be asked, does it actually communicate the purpose of PE well? I'm not going to give you any answers today, really just a chance to talk through what is in here and things you might want to consider as you jump through. So that's the purpose and the vision statement. I do think it is important that that words matter here, that what we are saying and what we're not saying is important. And so how we say it in this purpose and vision statement is important. And so it's worth some time just reading through it and saying, does this make sense? Do we understand it in the way that it's intended? Is there something that might be in here that needs clarification? That's something you might decide to feedback on. So that's the purpose and the vision statement. The next section is the subject description and pathways. What this is designed to do is provide, like your course booklet, a description for the subject of PE. And you'll see that it changes slightly between 11 and 12 and 13. But in essence, it's trying to sum up the entire subject in a few sentences. So there's some questions about whether or not you think it is successful at doing that. What is said and what is not said in these statements. One of the really obvious things we thought about when we saw these pathways was, what about a teacher? Do we want our young people to become physical education or physical educators? That's not one of the pathways listed. So those types of things, what have you seen in your own students in terms of their pathway choices that might need to be listed? This might not be the most important part to feed back on, but it does signal the way in which PE helps to develop capabilities and skills beyond sport or specific movement activities. So there is a chance to say, look, are there some things in here that we're missing that we really think should be signaled to young people? Given that the ministry's approach has been to try and present this in a way that parents understand, this is a chance to talk about the types of careers and pathways for our young people where physical education will provide a really solid and strong background for them. So do the pathways accurately represent where PE can lead? Are there important pathways missing? Does the positioning strengthen or narrow perceptions of PE? So that's the subject descriptors and pathways. Is there any parto or questions at this point in time? Raise hands. No. If I'm going too fast, you can tell me to slow down. I'm just really conscious there's a lot in this curriculum that I'm sure you want to talk about. So just trying to whip through as much as we can together. Okay, I'm going to roll on then. And then the final section, portion of the front end of both the curriculums are the capabilities and disciplinary writing sections. The capabilities section of the curriculum outlines some high level ways of being and doing, I guess, is a way to describe it. That young people, our students, will be working as they move through the physical education curriculum. These are the things they should be developing as a result of their time in a PE class, essentially. And so the questions that I would be asking here, one, are these capabilities appropriate at the year level? Sorry about that. Are they appropriate at the year level? So looking at year 11, a 15-year-old, are these capabilities the capabilities they should be developing in order to progress in their learning in PE? And then the same applied to the 12 and 13 curriculum. Do they reflect how learning in PE occurs? One of the questions that we have around the disciplinary writing part is, are we saying that writing is the main way in which young people will show their understanding of physical education concepts or knowledge? That is a question that isn't really clearly answered in this material. And so it's one of the questions that we will be putting back to the ministry ourselves. Is there a recognition of other types of disciplinary practices, i.e., practical, visual, oral, or embodied ways of communicating your understanding, which makes a lot of sense in a PE context. So there is an opportunity for you to think about in feeding back on the capabilities and disciplinary writing sections. Does this represent what PE is about, how we might communicate our understanding, and how we might show understanding throughout the process? And does it really strengthen the learning or create some unnecessary barriers? What is PE about? What are we trying to teach? What knowledge are we trying to teach? And is writing the best way to do that? There is some vagueness as to whether or not there is some compulsion around this disciplinary writing piece, or whether or not it was an attempt to try and unpack how writing might occur in PE. So it's unclear at this point in time. So that might be an area to think about when you're offering feedback, is what does this actually mean in practice? It hasn't been clearly articulated from the ministry's perspective in these materials. So that's something to think about in the capabilities and disciplinary writing portion. So really that the purpose, vision, subject descriptor and pathways, and then the capabilities and disciplinary writing, that makes up what we would probably refer to as the front end of this phase 5 curriculum. Seeing these curriculums a little bit differently to what is happening in year 1 to 10. These are being developed, from our understanding, they're being developed as standalone curriculums. So this would be the year 11 PE curriculum. Yes, it would build on knowledge that the young people will have experienced prior from phase 1 to 4. But in essence, this is the course, this is the syllabus, this is the material that will be taught to year 11s in PE, or year 12 and 13 students in PE. So that's the front part of it. Then we kind of go into what we would traditionally call the back end, but really around the structure, the subject structure and the sequence. What you'll see quite clearly in this in these materials is that there is a 4-strand structure. And I think that's one of the things that has been quite widely well received. Lots of people like the idea that it's quite a simple and straightforward structure, that there's 4 parts to it. There's the moving body, there's moving in environments, there's leadership and movement psychology, and then there's the socio-cultural parts. All probably quite familiar, maybe organized a little bit differently to what we know from the NZC, but they seem to feel more familiar to physical educators across the country. So there is some benefits to having that type of structure that makes it easier for us to understand, and which parts need to be taught when and how will become part of the next phase of professional development around how we support teachers to deliver all of this stuff. It's another bit of feedback that you might want to think about. So the teaching sequence, essentially what you'll see in the documents is similar to phase 1 to 4, knowledge and practices. So some things to think about in that space will be, is the knowledge clear? Does it make sense? Do the practices support the unpacking of the knowledge to a point where a teacher understands what are the skills, the strategies, or the applications that need to be applied to teach this stuff? So there are some questions about whether or not the practices, from our perspective, whether or not the practices sufficiently unpack the knowledge, but they make a good effort at trying to do so, we think. So that's one piece that you might want to think about as a team is, how do the four strands represent the discipline? Is there anything important missing? Does the sequence build logically? Is the amount of knowledge manageable? What opportunities exist for integration? Thinking about how might you sequence this out in a full year. One of the initial wonderings we've had, particularly around the year 11 material, less so around the year 12 and 13, but the year 11 material is there too much? If you think about, the indication has been that year 11s will stay right through to the end of the year. I'm not sure how that looks. But if you had a 40-week, say, minus everything that kind of interrupts your teaching, so probably about a 33 to 35-week teaching window, could you reasonably get through the knowledge that is listed in this curriculum? So that's a question you might want to think about in your departments and your teams. Think about, what are you already delivering in biomechanics or functional anatomy? Some of this stuff is going to be not new, but might be teaching it anew. So we might not have had to focus on it in the past. And so those are questions that I would be working out with my teams and thinking, just on a high level, do they make sense? You don't have to rewrite everything in here. It really is just about trying to make sense of it and then provide some guidance to the ministry and those who are writing in terms of manageability, in terms of content progression, and so on. So knowledges and practices, similar format that we've seen for the other products that have been delivered from the ministry. Are there any questions at this point around that structure and sequence? That's where the guts of this really sits, is in the knowledge and practices space. So are there any questions or wonderings people have in that space? Before I do jump on, there was a question that popped up around the final draft of the year 9 and 10 curriculum, and I will actually I'll answer that now. The process that has been in place from the ministry has been consultation closes. Let's look at the consultation feedback. They've set up multiple groups to work through that feedback and to provide recommendations to the ministry. PENZ has been involved in part of that process, but ultimately the ministry is the one who will determine what is acceptable and what will be published. So we have been advocating strongly, and perhaps what you might notice is when PENZ presented the alternative to the draft phase 1 to 10 content, the 9 and 10 structure that we recommended is somewhat similar to what we're seeing in phase 5. That's not to say the ministry listened per se, but we have seen some shifts in thinking, which we think is a really positive move. And by extension, we would hope that the phase 4 material builds into this program of learning, so it doesn't feel like a jarring experience for our students. Especially now, if you go back and look at year 9 and 10, the phase 4 material, and you compare it to the year 11 material, there is quite a big gap between what students would need to do in year 11 versus what they might be experiencing in year 9 and 10 based on the current draft. So we do expect that there will be movement there, but have to wait and see on that front. The other thing to to probably take note of in this section of this of the materials is that this will all be compulsory. The intention is that you teach all of these things, all of the knowledge statements. So your feedback around manageability and the scope of this material is going to be really important. There will be some stuff that we might not be able to influence, but unless the ministry hear from teachers on the ground around, if I was to take my year 11 program into like 35 weeks and meaningfully deliver all of this stuff, I would need to lose this, this, and this in order to be able to get through what is the heart of the learning here. That should be an expectation that we have, that we're trying to trim out some of this material so that it is manageable, but also what is most important, keeping that at the forefront. The other thing to think about is that the way in which we design our programs of learning from 9 to probably out to 11 might need to be adjusted. And so if you're thinking about how am I going to structure this in 2029, when we have to deliver this new curriculum, which hasn't landed yet. We have no time frame on that. This new curriculum for year 9 and 10 next year, where are we building to? And it would be worth considering whether or not the year 11 program actually kind of dovetails into phase 4 and it becomes this kind of whole package for you in terms of internal planning. Even though it's technically labeled as phase 5, you will notice a very big jump from the year 11 material into the year 12 and 13 material, which is by design high stakes, right? 12 and 13 high stakes, year 11 foundational kind of building into. So just checking some of those things. Do they work? Do they make sense? Do they feel right? Any questions, part-time? Any more? Nope. Kapai. So we're going to pop in to breakouts for like 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, just to have a chance to talk with some fellow physical educators around some of the things you know. What are you excited about? What are you wondering about or worried about? And then just nominate a person who's going to come back at the end of that 7 minutes and just share some of the things that were discussed in your rōpū. Following that, we'll come back and then we'll talk through what's the same, what does a consultation look like, and some other things, and then open questions that you might have around the curriculum development as a whole. Ka pai, so I'll see you back in 7 minutes if I can do this. Right, let's see. Clear, aroha mai team. Having a little bit of a technical glitch here while we try to get you into breakout rooms. You should momentarily disappear.
So
I don't know how long. How do we stop them? Oh, I just close the rooms right at the end
you
of the.
close it so I can just see your managing rooms.
Yeah.
So they're all in separate rooms now.
Yeah, I've got them in 4 rooms. There's about 11 or 12 people in each room. It's probably
Oh,
too many
yeah.
people, but it's okay.
And then you can open them and see who's in there.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Can I pop into one?
Yes, you can join it. It should have a little join next to the room.
Okay.
So I think you can pop into one.
I might just pop into them and then scoot around.
Nope.
Hey.
Hey, hey.
Hello. Is that you, Jordan? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, hi.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm
Hey,
good,
we
thanks.
we didn't get a link or anything. We had to go through a personal Hotmail account. So I don't know if
Oh,
others have had
okay.
the same issue. Like there was nothing in spam or anything like that.
Oh,
So
okay. That's
yeah, a
very
bit of a funny
strange.
one. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
let
I
me
don't know what it
just
was.
so they've just gone into breakout rooms, so I'll add you to one of the breakout rooms
Oh, okay,
and we'll just go from there.
okay.
Just give me, I just got to figure out how to do it, that's all. So
Because
give me a
we
minute.
we were just in the webinar, and then I think we just got kicked from it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's no
Like it just
good.
like it just ended.
Oh, okay. Let me just see if I can put you in one of the
All
breakout
good,
rooms,
all good.
okay?
Yeah,
All right,
sweet.
give me a minute.
We
I
can
gotta
hold
figure
fire.
it
Yeah,
out.
we just hold fire. It's all good. Thank you.
Let's here we go, breakout rooms. So, person knows any unsaved. Oh no, I'm gonna take over from Himmy because I might lose him. Um,
No stress.
I might not be able to add you
No,
in.
no, that's all
Sorry.
good. We'll just hold fire until everyone comes back.
Okay, they shouldn't be too far away. I think they're
All
only
good,
having
all good,
about
all good.
5 minutes or so.
Yes, sweet.
So have you caught any of the
We
webinar so
came in at
far?
about slide 6, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, about
Okay,
slide 6.
okay,
Yeah, so caught some of it.
yeah, okay.
But yeah, I'm not sure what happened. It's I registered a few times and I just didn't get an email at all.
It
Nothing in
didn't send
spam.
it to your, oh, did you use your school email address?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether your firewall or what have you at the school might not let it through if it's with Teams sometimes. And
Yeah.
Google, you
We're in
probably use
Google School.
Google.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I wonder whether that might be what it was.
Mm,
That's a real shame because normally if it happens, it sends something through to your spam, and sometimes you
yeah,
miss the link for it.
yeah.
Otherwise, if you go back and as if you're going to register again, it just says join, and that way it should let you join it again anyway. It's just that
Okay.
normally when you've registered for it, we'll
Right.
put a calendar note in it too.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. So just hold fire and
All
hopefully
good.
they will be back soon.
Thank you.
That's okay. Jordan, you still there?
Yeah.
Thanks for holding on.
All
I'm trying
good.
to find him. Is in one of the meeting rooms, and I feel like I'm like running around a school trying to find him in a classroom online though. So
Yeah,
I'm trying
classic.
to
Nah,
find him because he's got the control of the room, so I can't
oh, yeah.
find him to get him to do it. So unfortunately, I
Nah,
can't pop you in there.
that's fine. Honestly, no problem. We're happy just chilling. We'll lock back
Oh,
in once
I
they
feel
come
like I
in.
should be singing or something.
No, no, no. No,
Bit of
we're
background
all good.
music on.
No, no, we're all good. We're all good.
Okay, that's all good then. Hopefully there won't be too much longer.
No problem.
some reason my camera turned off. We'll head back in 1 minute. They'll come back in, and then we'll just close the rooms. I can't hear you.
I'm on mute. Sorry. We've got Jordan here with us as
Jordan.
well, who wasn't able to. I couldn't assign him to a breakout room. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay.
We'll be here. I'm good.
But he's
good.
okay.
Don't worry about me.
He's waiting patiently.
Everyone will be back in a minute.
Yeah, no, you're sweet. Don't worry about it.
There was a bit awkward silence in some of those rooms, though. Like I was going
Oh, was there?
Yeah, talk to each other, guys. Talk. Right, I might just close these rooms and get everyone back.
Cut us off.
Welcome back.
Good population.
Kia ora, welcome back. Okay, let's hear it. I did manage to pop around to some of the rooms, so it'd be good for you to do just a brief feedback on what's on top, what some of the things that's been on top in your breakout room. Who wants to kick us off?
I can kick us off.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. We talked, I've lost my notes, about the high volume and the concern about getting through. Please speak up if you're in my group, because I feel like I'm just forcing my opinions here. That was really high volume and so much to do. We're not used to it feels quite controlling. We didn't talk about this, with the tick boxes and the bullet points. It feels that's very like the maths and the science curriculum, which is a massive shift for us. But the volume that they want is quite overwhelming and quite. I think I mentioned it was too much, and that a lot to do to go into year 12 and 13 as well. Like it could almost be one as that would take a 2 years to do. Like it's just I've lost my notes. Anyway, yeah, we thought it was missing in, through and about PE. It doesn't tick all those boxes. We're worried about Mataranga Māori. It's just sort of disappeared, and I don't know. And then about the writing, we talked about that there's so many different ways that we can assess our students, and that being literate and writing has always been our strength, that we can teach quite a diverse group of students. I think, I don't know, is that enough?
Kia ora. That sounds, that's a meaty conversation. I'm sure there will be a few people who will be agreeing with some of those sentiments and have some similar questions. And I do think that that point around manageability and the loading of this curriculum is an important one to consider in your teams when you're offering feedback. They need expert teachers, that's all of you, to give them the guidance around what this workload could look like. The other part to take into consideration is that the curriculum does need to look like this from the ministry's perspective. So we're not going to get something wildly different, but what we can do is influence the number of points, knowledge points within that, based on your professional judgments around what makes a quality learning program through year 11 and out to 12 and 13. The in, through and about, was going to be my final question around this, is that does it sufficiently cover in, through and about? And questions around mātauranga, you will notice, which I think is quite an interesting point given its complete absence in phase 1 to 4, is that oranga as an extension of hauora is actually listed as a substrand. And so what does that mean in terms of our practice? Does it enable things to happen across the strands? Certainly the intention versus what it looks like needs to be tested as well. So if there's an intention to incorporate mātauranga, particularly as we move into 12 and 13 with this combined subject, has that actually been effective? Has it happened? If not, what would you like to see that kind of helps draw it closer to our expectations of that? Really, how would you like to see it? You don't have to come up with all the statements. You just can provide feedback. Actually, we think it needs to look more like this. We would like hauora or wellbeing or mātauranga to be embedded across all strands, not just one strand, or we like where the one strand is and we want more other things across the different strands. Kapai, thank you, Amy, for being tribute to that group. Right, next Ropu, who's our next group? I'm not going to know who was in the group because I didn't keep a list, so someone's going to have to pipe up and...
Kia ora, Shelley Darcy, Tautua Ihu, top of the south. Chips nominated me for what she'll pay me later. We started off by being excited about the fact, thank you, Hemi, that there is a potential shift with what's happening in year 9 and 10, hopefully to reflect the huge amount of negative feedback that they got from the original draft, which had us all particularly worried. And so it was nice to have a positive. We too were worried about in, through and about movement. You know, where's the essence of demonstrate things as opposed to examine, describe, explain. We had some interesting discussions about assessment in terms of how much was there and how much was prescribed. And where that was leading to. But then on the other hand, isn't it good to see what might be there without assessment driving what's there? There is a lot, and some of it is pretty high level. It's not quite the same as nuanced refereeing, but there are some things kind of along those lines as well. And will we have to, and I suppose the answer is yes, teach all 4 of those strands, whereas at present we kind of touch on all of those 4 strands at level 1, but most schools potentially are only doing 3 in terms of assessment, but cover 4 in preparation for later years. Anyone else from my group who thinks I've missed anything, please chime in.
Kia ora, Shelley. Any other chimers?
Kapai.
No other chimers. Yeah, those are some really good talking points and things that you want to be thinking about when you're crafting submissions and feedback. I'm encouraging, and we're encouraging every single person in the department to just put something in the submission and feedback. Even if it's one part of the whole puzzle, the more pieces we get put together, the clearer the message will become, because they'll have to synthesize all of this. Things around assessment are very vague and unclear at the moment. We don't know a lot about what is going to happen in assessment land. What is unclear is what happens in year 11, given that there is no qualification outside of the foundation qualification, which is literacy and maths. And so what we do know is that the expectation is that students will be taught all of this, and that might be for year 12 and 13 in relation to the assessment portion. That might be guided by the fact that they couldn't get a pass in a course without passing all 4, or whatever number it is, all 4 of the standards that are assessed in that, or 3 of the 4 standards. So there was a gearing towards achieving a subject that might mean that teachers have to teach all of the content. So the question around loading and content manageability is going to be an important one. And yeah, how clear is it in this curriculum that movement is prioritized? It seems logical that that would be the thing a PE curriculum does, but is it obvious? And because you want it to be obvious for all educators and all teachers in it. So good questions. I think, those are the types of things others will be thinking about. Kia ora, 2 more to go. Haven't forgot about number 3 and 4. Don't know what number you were, but... Who were we?
Well, I know our group hasn't been, so I'll jump in and others can add. Agree with a lot of what's been said. There was a degree of optimism, which is really nice, especially for those that have engaged quite heavily in the phase 1 to 4 feedback and looking at that. So that was nice. And we just spoke about how in feeding back on phase 5 without having seen the final phase 1 to 4 that is slightly problematic, but does give us an opportunity to drill down on the feedback that we gave for phase 1 to 4. So saying if we're to be successful in phase 5, if it's to be appropriate, that this is what we need to see in phases 1 to 4. There was some conversation just around the amount of content, the level of which it was pitched at some of it, does it provide pathways for all of our students? And then Emily threw in a great question, was when we look at this curriculum, do we feel it answers the question around, does it allow our kids to be physically educated? And we also just had that conversation around how much movement is really explicit in the curriculum. I think that's kind of some of the key stuff we touched on.
Okay. Thank you, Celia. Again, similar messaging, right? Like it's good to. I think it's been good to know that we're kind of sharing similar concerns. There's a level of optimism, and this process has been different from the last process. I will really, I think it's really important to outline that, as the development for phase 1 to 4 was hugely problematic and had significant flaws. This one has been sufficiently rushed. It's gone so quickly. However, the development process has been very different. We know that we've got New Zealand physical educators, experts in that group, writing and seeking to understand how the sector, how we all view what is being produced. And so your feedback will be useful to them who are trying to craft something based on what the ministry guidelines are and all of the other tensions that are at play. So a little bit of a different process that's in play for phase 5 as was for phase 1 to 4. I think we've got one more group. We're gonna have someone from that last group.
I was holding out, but I feel like no one else might answer it. Westlake, we're all here to team effort. But ours was very much similar to what everyone else has kind of covered. We are concerned that it's really, really content heavy, that there are some really good, there's some really good content in there, but how we could map that out across the year and actually get through it. Right now, the flexibility of being able to choose different elements within a topic, for example, biomechanics, being able to choose the specific ones that work with the context that we're teaching is great, and we can really tailor and teach that content in depth. However, if we have to teach all of it, how do we realistically fit that in and have the students at a level of understanding where they do have an opportunity to showcase their knowledge? We are concerned about the lack of practical opportunities. It doesn't seem as clear in the practices. So there is a huge amount of content, and a lot of that would need to be taught in theory lessons. So how could we ensure that the movement and practical element is still front and centre? We're assuming that you could interweave the different knowledge strands to make up the units, but we would need a bit of clarification on that, if that is the case. And was that all? You know what? I think that's all.
That sounds brilliant. Thank you, Westlake crew. Look, I think there are some questions around program design and teacher professional development and support. Legitimate questions, chuck them into the feedback. Ask those questions. You don't have to have answers for everything the ministry asks. You can just submit some questions that you have as a physical educator or as teams. Certainly, the explicit nature of movement within this, how explicit does it need to be? Is it explicit enough? Is one of the important messages that seems to be popping through. We still want it to be physical education. I think one of the things you will notice is there has been some learning from the phase 1 to 4 in that this curriculum is essentially context free, which is a huge step in the right direction, away from the very prescribed cricket, volleyball, hockey, rugby kind of phase 1 to 4 materials. So it looks as though there's been a deliberate effort to try and create a context-free curriculum experience so you can deliver it in the best way for your students in your community based on the local needs. So those are things to watch out for. Team, we've come to the end of our time together, and I'll just wrap up by going through the consultation questions. The PowerPoint will be available on our website after our hui today, so you can access this. It's got links on it that takes you to the relevant documents. We know the ministry's website is a challenge at times. This one just really talks about what seems to be the same across both those documents. So if you're kind of feeding back on one element, like the purpose statement, you might do it for year 11 and 12 and 13 combined, as opposed to do one for year 11 and one for 12 and 13. There's similarities across them. They do try to articulate that movement contributes to wellbeing. Whether or not it does that is a question for the feedback, right? The consultation. Pedagogy, we know that there's knowledge rich in science of learning. That's how this curriculum is going to roll. So that's common across both the documents. Organisation, we know there's 4 strands common across both documents. So if you're feeding back on a strand, you could probably feed back on one strand in relation to year 11, 12 and 13, not just one or the other. Capabilities, we know those sit the same across both. Same with the literacy and the learning and curriculum design component. So you can be smart about how you offer the feedback. You don't have to go through every strand of everything. It would be useful to be able to talk about those things as a team, but there are some things that you can kind of double up on. The consultation questions really go through, if you're filling out the form on the ministry's website, which is the most appropriate way to give this feedback, overarching questions, subject-specific questions, quality assurance ones, and then upload an additional document or feedback. I would suggest if you don't want to go through all the questions, just put everything down in a Google Doc or a Word doc, download it as a PDF, go through the form and fill out what you need to get to the add additional information, and then upload the file, because that file will be submitted as feedback anyway. So you don't have to just answer all the questions they've got. Just click, 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 upload. You'll see all the on the slides, there's the link to the survey questions, so you can see those. And this is all due by the 8th of July, because 4 weeks is sufficient time for feedback. The last thing I would keep coming back to is, does this curriculum help us realise physical education as learning in movement, learning through movement, learning about movement, and learning for movement and wellbeing? That's that whole kind of holistic piece. It's in, through, and about, and for. Is that what we see here? And every piece of feedback the ministry gets can help shape that. That's us, team. Appreciate your time this afternoon. I will hang around for a few minutes afterwards. If anyone wants to have a quarter or a chat, I will take any questions that we've got from this that have gone unanswered, and we'll send it out to everyone. But otherwise, really appreciate you all stopping in this afternoon, and we'll let you get back on with your days.